Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this multi-strand hollow Kumihimo braid using wire, and this is what it looks like. So I'm just using two different colours of wire here, a silver one and a copper, to give a really nice effect, but you can obviously use whatever you want to. You can also use a different gauge with this. I'm using 0.8, you can use 0.6 if you want to. It's going to work exactly the same and get a similar result, just a different gauge wire. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the things that we'll need. Now we need the round Kumihimo disc here because we're making a round braid, and then the wires that I'm using are these. They're both regular round wire and it's both 0.8mm in gauge, and I'm just using the copper colour and then a silver wire here just to get a nice effect with the different colours, but you can also use the same colour as well if you want to. And then to finish off the ends of the braid, what I have here are some Kumihimo ends, but instead of having a loop at the top like most of them do, they actually have a hole. So you can put your own wire through there, which we're going to be doing. So we need to use them, and these are 10mm in diameter. And then here I just have the findings that I want to use, so extended chain, lobster claw clasp, and then jump rings there as well. And then finally here, the last thing that we're going to be needing for this is a homemade tool. So this is a wooden dowel that I just cut down to a decent working length, and then I just put a hook at the end here because we can use this to attach a weight if we want to, but also to help attach our wires around to get the whole braid started. So we need this because it's going to be the core of the bracelet. So then let's get all the materials together and let's get started. So the first thing that we need to do is cut all our wire, and that's what I've done here. And what we need is all the lengths here to be 90 centimeters long, about that. And then what we need in total as well is 12 lengths of our wires. Now in my case, because I'm using the two different colours, I've got 8 silver ones here, and then I've got 4 copper ones. Obviously that's up to you. If you want to make it all the same colour, you just cut all the wires to this length and in the same colour as well. And I'm just using those copper ones for the accent colour. That's why I've got more of the silver one, because I'm going to be doing groups of 3. So I've got 2 of the silver in each group and 1 of the copper. And each length of these as well will kind of fold over, because we're going to be folding them over in the middle, and turn into 2 of our working lengths of wire. So these are the wires that we need to cut. And then what we need to do is get our tool out here, so the dowel that we made with the hook at the end. Because what we need to do is attach all these groups of wires now onto this so we can start making the braid. And then what I'm going to do is grab 3 wires at a time. So in my case, I'm taking 2 of my silver and then 1 of the copper, because that's the groups that I want to be making them in. If you're just using the one colour, just grab 3 of your wires and then put them together. I'm just going to then put the ends together as well, just roughly. So like this, because then we just need to find roughly where the middle is of these wires. So that's around here. And then what I'm going to do is keep hold of this, and what I'm going to try and do as well is make sure that the wires are lying flat next to each other. And because I'm using the 2 colours, I want my copper one to stay in the middle. Now this might be a bit tricky, don't worry too much about it now, but just if you can, try and do that. Then I'm going to get my tool here and then use that hook at the end there to attach these wires. So this group of 3, I'm going to get where the middle is there and the wires, and just wrap these around the hook. Just once is fine, just like that. So they're coming up now to each their own side there. So that's the first group attached. So we just want to be doing this with all our wires until we have them all attached in our groups of 3, just like this. So I've now attached all my lengths of wire there in the groups that I want it to sit in. And then it's going to look a bit of a mess on here, but don't worry too much about that. Just make sure you attach them. You can just use around the hook and then do it on top of each other as well. It gets a bit bulky, but the ends of the braid is going to be hidden inside those Kumihimo ends. But also we can always cut off a bit of the ends if we need to, if it's a bit too messy. So this is where we're at now. What we need to do now is attach all this to the Kumihimo board. So I've got my Kumihimo disc out now, and then what we need to do is this tool that we made where all the wires are on, we need to attach that. And now just take your time doing this because it might be a little bit fiddly positioning all the wires in the right place, but just take your time doing it. So what we need to do is the hook end where all the wires are attached need to go down basically through that hole in the disc. So we just place it like this for now. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit fiddly to begin with, but just take your time. And then what we have is all these groups of our wires, so groups of 3. So I'm going to keep them in them and then just focus on the dots on the Kumihimo disc. Like that. So don't worry about the numbers. What we need to do is place one group of wires on each side of every dot all the way around the disc. So just take the groups that are closest to that dot. So this is pointing upwards, so I'm going to place that in that. And then that belongs to over there. You have this group. And because I'm using that copper wire in the groups as well, I'm going to try and make sure I keep that in the middle now. Now still, it's not too crucial just yet, because not until we start the actual braid, but it's just easy if you try and do it all the way throughout. So that's placed on the other side of that dot. So then towards the side here, we've got another group, like that. And continue like this all the way around the disc. Just taking your time, keeping them in your groups. Until you have them all placed in the right positions. And the last two are here. So just like that. And then what we have is all the groups of wire positioned around the dots on the disc, and then we just have the tool here, the dowel, wooden dowel sticking up in the middle. And that's what it needs to do all the way throughout, because this is going to be the core and create that space inside the bracelet. So at this point, if you feel the need as well, what you can do is that hook we have at the end of this dowel that we made, you can always add a Kumihimo weight to that. It's going to help add the weight to help you pull the braid down, especially because it's wire that we're working with. I'm still going to be pulling it down with my hands and making sure I mold it as we go, but I'm going to show you that when we get to it. But you can add a weight to it now if you want to. So the type of braid that we're going to be doing is a hollow Kumihimo braid. Now if you're a bit unfamiliar with that, I do have a video that shows in detail how to do it with cord, so that might be helpful having a look at that first, because it's a bit of a different technique than your regular round Kumihimo braid. So I'm going to put a link to that video in the description box below. And what I would also just recommend when you do this kind of thing, so any wire Kumihimo that you might do, is that you have a fair bit of space around you, because you are working with longer lengths of wire and a lot of them at the same time crossing over each other, so they kind of go everywhere. So if you just be mindful of that, and obviously also so you don't poke anyone in the eyes or anything. But then now to show you the technique and how we're going to create the braid here. Now like I said, the beginning part of the braid is probably not going to look that nice, not until we got it going properly. But don't worry too much about that, because what we need to do is kind of get the braid started, and then also making sure that we keep the groups kind of flat, so the wires flat next to each other, and making sure that they stay the same throughout, so have the middle one always be in the middle where they don't cross over each other. So the technique to making this braid is that, like I said, we're focusing just on the dots here. We're always going to have a wire by or very close to the dots. So what I'm going to do is start with my top left group of wires here, so on the left side of the top dot, and then what we need to do is bring this over to the right, so towards the right side of the disc, jumping over that very next one, and then bringing it over to this side, and then place it in the slot just before the next set of wires here on the side. And then what you need to do, because we're working with wire, like I said, the beginning is going to be messy probably regardless what you do, but just as we get into it, what you need to make sure that you do is have a nice tension on your wires as well, so we get nice and even and tight around the dowel here in the middle. But then that's the first one, and then we grab the very next group of wires, so the one on the upper side of the dot on the side there. Just make sure that they're lined flat, and if you have a coloured one, a different coloured one in the middle, make sure that that one is in the middle. And also just smooth out your wires as you go. I like to do that as well. It also helps warm up the wire, which makes it easier to work with because it makes it more malleable. So we take that, jump over the next one, so over the one underneath the dot, and then place it in the slot right before the next pair down here. And again, just make sure you tighten it up. It's going to come more natural. You're going to find your tension as we get further on. We just need to get it started to begin with. Grab the very next group of wires here, You smooth it out, make sure the middle one is in the middle, and then bring it over the very next one, and then place it in the slot before the next pair here. What I also like to do, you can't do it so much yet, but as we go and we get more braid created, I'm going to show you as well. I like to grab it on the back of the disc as well with my fingers, because that helps pull it through and also tighten it up as we go. I'm going to show you that later on as well. Grab the very next one, make sure they lie flat, jump up and over the pair or the group just after, and place it back in the very top slot where you took the very first group of wires. So just like that. So that's the first way, going all the way around the disc. So now that we moved in the one direction around the disc, we need to go back the other way as well and use all the wires that we haven't moved yet. So that means I'm going to start on my top right side now. So take that group of wires, just smooth it out, and then bring it the opposite direction around the disc, jumping over the left one in this case then, so the one we just placed in there. Bring it all the way over, have a nice tension, and then place it in the slot right before the next pair where the dot is, basically, down there. And then the only difference what you'll find now is that we have a spacing in between down here. Don't worry about that, we're just going to grab the very next group here of our wires, smooth it out, bring it over and jump over the next one and place it in the slot right before the next group down on the bottom here. So like that, working our way around the disc, making sure every time you're moving anything that you keep them flat. Grab the very next group of wires, smooth it out whenever you need to, bring it over, have nice tension. And like I said in the beginning, it is going to be messy because all the wires just basically need to just find their place in the weave that's going to end up forming. But jump over the next one and bring it down in the slot right before the next pair by the dot over there. Grab that very one, the group right after, move up the disc, jump over the next pair up towards the top dot there, and then place it in that slot that we opened up when we started going that way around the disc. So now we're at the place where the top looks the same, so they're both close to the dot, just right next to the dot on each side, but the rest of them, they're more spaced out. So because of that, what we need to do now is reposition all our groups of wires except for the top one there, because that's just how it needs to be. So we need to reposition the rest of them. So just take one group at a time, keep them nice and flat, the middle one in the middle, and just bring it one slot in towards the dot there. Just so it's going to end up looking just like the original setup of the disc. Like that. And do that all the way around. So the bottom one's here as well. And you'll have to take your time throughout as well, just to make sure that all your wires line flat next to each other. It does get easier once we've had a little bit of braid going. But you still just be aware of it throughout. And you'll find kind of your own rhythm as well of doing it. Like this one, gotta just make sure that that copper one is in the middle right from the beginning down there. So just keep repositioning them if it's necessary. And then place it in the dot, the slot right down there on that side of the dot. And the last group, last pair over here, place it in towards the dot, and then this one, move it one slot down. So just like that. So now we're in a position where this is kind of how the original setup looked like. So that was basically one full go around on the disc here. So all we do now is repeat this step again. So we take the top left one, make sure it's flattened out, all the wires line flat next to each other. So I can see in here they've actually swapped places. That's why I just keep an eye on it and change it as you go if you need to. I just need him to swap all the way in there. So just like that. But like I said, it's still the beginning now, so it hasn't quite, the wires haven't quite found their space yet. So just do this as you go, and it will end up being right. So I'm going to bring this, jump over the very next one, around that same dot, bring it over, have a nice tension. So you want to pull nicely. While I'm smoothing out the wires, I'm pulling it over with a nice tension, and then placing it before that next pair around the side there. Grab the next one, make sure they're flat with my copper in the middle, none of them crossing over each other. Bring it over with a nice tension and place it before the next pair down on the bottom there. Grab the very next group, smooth them out. Just double check everything is like it is, how they lie how they're supposed to lie, right in the center there as well. If they do, bring them over, jump over the very next group and place before the next pair over here. And then the next one, continue with this, smooth it out, jump over the very next one and place it back on that top slot that we have free. And then we need to go back the other way again as well. So take your top right one, group of wires there, smooth it out, bring it the other way around the disc with a nice tension. There's still, obviously we haven't got that much braid yet because this is only the second time we're going around, so there still isn't that much to grab onto the other side of the disc, but just try and grab onto whatever you have. That's why I say having the weight as well can kind of help, having something to kind of grab onto with your hand. Place it in with a nice tension. Grab the very next one, jump down the disc and over the very next group, make sure it's flat, with a nice tension, and then place it in the next slot there. Starting to get a little bit more braid to hold on to. Grab the next group, just like that. Jump over and then place it before the next group, the next pair, with a nice tension, and then grab the last one there and jump over the next one, and just make sure the wires are sitting properly. Just swap places there. There we go. And then place it in that empty slot at the top. So now we're back to the beginning almost, so we just need to reposition again. And then when you reposition your wires as well, you can kind of give it a little bit extra tension, like that. So just pull them a little bit more. It just helps position them even better in place. All the way around. Until the disc looks just like the original position again. Just like that. There we go. We're now back in the starting position once more. So now, like I said, you just keep doing this over and over again, and then your braid will form in here in the middle around your dowel growing up, and it'll be coming out of the back side here, on the back side of the disc. And like I said, the beginning will be messy, don't worry about that, you can't really avoid that. But just keep forming your braid, and then because obviously it's wire and it's a bit of a thicker gauge, just as you go, I kind of sometimes push the dowel down a little bit, and then I also on the back here, it's hard to look because there's not that much braid, but once we get some more braid done, you can grab it at the back and actually grab onto the dowel itself and onto the braid. And what I normally do is kind of grab onto it with my hand and my fingers and help mold the braid around the dowel, which is also going to make it a lot tighter and more even as well. So once you get a bit more braid, you can start doing that and just basically press as you're moving your wires in the positions to get it around your disc. Then just gradually push your wires in around the dowel. because that's what that dowel is there for, to basically get that even cord throughout the whole piece. So keep doing this until we then have a decent length or you're running out of your wires. So now I've gotten much further along, and I just want to then show you what I meant by grabbing it on the back here, because you have your braid coming out there. So once I can start grabbing this right at the beginning, and obviously now there's plenty of space, what I do is up here keep hold of this dowel with my hand, and I just, as I go making the braid, I squeeze this in as well. So the braid or the wire here is going to lie as nice and close and tight around the dowel as possible. So that's what I do as I'm building the braid and moving my wires around up on the disc. So I've now kept making my braid here until I've used up all my wires on the side. I don't really have enough now to work with anymore. And then this is what it looks like. So what we need to do now is take it off the disc. But a little tip that I just want to give you is, instead of saying you measure your length of braid that you're making and you find from the beginning and then up to say about here, that's long enough for your bracelet. Instead of then stopping doing your braid where you've got quite long lengths of wire left, I recommend that you keep going until you're running out of your wires. Because even though now I have got more braid than what I need for a bracelet length, it just means I have a little bit more play regarding the ends. Because maybe you'll find on your braid that, say, one of the ends, the beginning is a little bit messy. So that gives you the option to cut a little bit more off that, but you still have enough length to make the bracelet. So that's just a little tip. But then what we need to do now is take it off the disc. So we just take our wires off here, and we don't need to worry about making any knots or tying off the end. So obviously it's wires, so it's not going to just unravel by itself, just like cord would. It's just going to stay exactly where we've left it. And then take your disc off here. So this is then how the braid looks. So now what we can do is take the dowel out and the hook there, because we're done with them. So I'm just going to unscrew the hook at the end and take it off like that. And then we'll just take the dowel out as well. So we're done with the tool. So this is then what the braid looks like. And you can see there's gaps in there as well, so it's a bit hollow. You can look through it. So this is where we can then just have a look at our braid and see if there's an end that's a bit more messy than the other. So probably more likely the beginning part is going to be the messiest part until we've got the braid going properly. So this is where you just want to figure out what part of your length of braid here that you want to use for your bracelet. So what I'm then going to do is get my measuring tape out here to then figure out what part of the braid I want to use for the bracelet and the length of it. And what I want is about a 7 to a 7.5 inch bracelet. And what we've got to keep in mind as well, that the clasp is going to take up some of that length. So we need this to be a bit shorter than the actual length we want the bracelet to be. So obviously the clasp will depend on what kind of clasp you're using, how much space that's going to take up. But what I'm then going to do is get my wire cutters here, my flush cutters, and then decide from this end, the beginning, where I want to cut off my braid basically. So where it starts to look quite nice and neat. And then what I'm just going to do is go in and start cutting it off here. So just do a little bit at a time. If you need to, do one wire at a time, or you can do each section. And just go all the way around the braid. So now that I've cut off that end and I'm happy with the beginning part of that braid, then I'm also going to just do the same on the other end. So in my case, I want this length of braid to be about 7 inches long. The final bracelet's going to end up about 7.5 inches. So again, just lay it to your measurement and then do the exact same thing. So go in and cut off from the other end. So now that I have my ready length of braid here, then what we can just do is, it's not too necessary, but what I just like to do is get some round nose pliers and then just the end wires here. It's not too necessary, like I said, because they'll be hidden inside the Kumihimo ends. But I'm just going to gently take some of them and just bend them inwards. Just a tiny little bit. And it also makes the end a little bit narrow in a way, so it can fit nicely inside that Kumihimo end. So just do it all the way around. Just like that. But like I said, because it's wire, we don't have to worry about the end unraveling. It's going to sit nicely and securely enough inside that ribbon end. So what we need to do to be able to put all the parts together now to get a finished bracelet is we need to get out a length of a 0.8mm wire, and I'm just using the silver one, so just a single length, and I've made this about 50 centimeters long. It just needs to be long enough basically to go around your wrist, so the length of your bracelet, and then a bit more because we need to make some loops as well. So we need to start towards one end of this length of wire here that we cut off, and what I'm going to do is make a wrap loop on each end, but we need to do this one first before we then add this to the bracelet. So I'm going to take my flat nose or chain nose pliers here, then bend it back at an angle, about 90 degrees like that. And then what I'm going to use is just my 6-step bail making pliers here. You can easily use round nose pliers, that's fine. I just like using these because I make sure that the loops become the exact same size. So I'm going to place these, I'm using the second smallest one, right on that angle, bend the little tail back around and back over the front so we get a little circle like that. And then I'm going to take my flat nose pliers again, keep hold of that circle, and then use this tail to wrap around just below the circle. And this is a wrap loop. So I just do it normally about 2 to 3 times and try and make sure you get these wraps as nice and close as possible. Just like that. And then I'm going to get my flush cutters to be able to get right in close and cut off the excess of this tail, like that. Grab my chain nose again, and then because what we're going to have, we just cut off the excess, we're always going to have a little tiny bit of that sticking out. So I always like to take my chain nose, just go in and just squeeze that down. So once you run your finger over it, you can't feel it. Just like that. So there we then have a wrap loop on one end of this 0.8mm wire. So then what we need to do is go to the other end here, so the open end, and then I grab my first Kumihimo end there. So we need to get this on first, and we need to go kind of from the top of it, so like that, not towards the inside first. We need to go through the top of it, through that hole, and then let it come all the way down, because then that wrap loop we just did is going to be on the outside, at the end of the bracelet, that we're then going to use to attach a clasp with. And then what we're going to do is basically just attach or add the braid that we have, the piece of braid, onto this wire as well. So we have this wire running all the way through the bracelet, connecting the ends and being able to use that to attach our clasp with, and it's going to make it really nice and secure. So just get this wire through. Obviously you got some gaps so it can come out, but just maneuver it all the way down to the other end. So just like this, I now have my wire there through the middle coming out the other end. So I'm going to get this all the way down, and then what we need to do down here is get this end of the braid inside the Kumihimo end. So you probably just need to do a bit of maneuvering. So you can just gently press it together here. That's why also folding in the ends a bit with the round nose pliers that I did, it's going to help with that. And then just take your time, get all these ends of your wire inside that Kumihimo end, and make sure you get all of them in, because then the end is going to be nicely finished off. It's going to be both secure, but also we don't have any ends of wire sticking out anywhere to catch or scratch on anything, and it's also going to look nice and professional. So like this, and just push it all the way in, and then there is the one end of the bracelet. Now what you could do at this point, because even though obviously this is mainly focused on the wire work, this braid, because we used 3 per section, but what you could do, because we still have kind of those gaps in between, you could always add some beads inside of this if you wanted to. So maybe some nice black ones would be a nice background colour. So that's completely up to you. I'm just going to leave it like it is, but if you were to add beads, all you would do is just add them to this end of the wire, and then just feed them down through the braid and let them come all the way down. But that's completely up to you. I'm just going to leave mine like this because I want the wire to be in focus. So then what we need to do now is basically start shaping this into the bracelet shape before I finish off the other end. I just like to do that because there's going to be, when you're shaping it, there's going to be some movement in the wire work as well. So, and I don't want kind of finish off this end and then something goes a little bit out of proportion. So I'd rather shape it now, at least roughly. So just decide what direction you want to shape it. If you have one side of the braid that's a bit nicer, you can make sure you have that pointing upwards. So all I do is just gently, a bit at a time, I start working my way across a little bit at a time and just putting a curve in there, back and forth. You could also, if you have something to wrap it around, you could easily do that, that has the right size and shape that you want it to be. But if you don't have anything, you can also do it this way, just going back and one way to the other way across the bracelet. And just do it gently, because you don't want any, say, go in the middle and do a big bend, because you're going to end up with a bit of misshapen bracelet. So we need that gentle curve all the way across. So just keep doing this, working your way until it's almost the right size and shape that you need it to be. So I've now shaped it into this bracelet shape, so it's almost exactly how I want it to look. And then what there's left to do is finish off the other end here. So what you want to make sure to do is just, this wire needs to be pulled all the way through, but then we take the other Kumihimo end there, and this time we want to put it through the inside first, because obviously the braid is going in there, and then through the hole, let it come all the way down to the end of the braid, the other end here, and then again just feed this onto it, making sure all the ends of the wires are tucked inside of it. So just like that. Just double check all the way around, and you can always, like I said, if it doesn't quite fit, just squeeze them tight a little bit, squeeze all the ends of your wires there a little bit to get them inside. So just like that, and make sure that this 0.8mm wire going through the whole bracelet is pulled tight, so your loop here on the other side is sitting right on the outside of that Kumihimo end. Because on this end we then need to do the exact same thing, so make a wrap loop to secure it in place. So again, I'm going to get my chain nose or flat nose pliers, I'm going to go in, and what I just like to make sure of is that my loops are facing in the same direction. So this one is facing sideways, so this one I'm going to go in, make sure, like I said, that it's pulled all the way through, and leave a bit of a gap between the Kumihimo end and where you make your first bend, because that's what we need to make the wraps, to make it a wrap loop. Bend it to the side there, and then I'm going to get my bail making pliers to make the loop, use the same size as I did on the other end to make the circle all the way around, just like that. And again, just take your chain nose pliers, keep hold of that loop, and then finish it off by wrapping around a few times around just below the loop. And basically you just want to now fill up that space that you have, the gap that you left, so until this wire that you're wrapping meets the Kumihimo end and it's basically nice and secure. So if that means about 2 or 3 wraps, something like this, and it feels nice and secure now, it's going to stay in place. So then I take my wire cutters, my flush cutters, cut off the excess like that. Again, the chain nose to just get that very end all the way pushed in so it's not sticking out. We'll finish it off nicely and neatly, just like that. So there's now the 2 loops on each end, and the bracelet itself, the main part, is done. All that's left to do is use these loops now to connect whatever clasp you want to use. So I'm going to do that using my jump rings. So I've now added my clasp and extended chain here, and then this is your finished bracelet. And you get a really nice effect like this, and obviously especially using your 2 colours there, but you can obviously do whatever you want. Just use one if you want to. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this wire Kumihimo bracelet with beads running along the inside of the braid, and it looks like this. So this is the effect that you get. You have your Kumihimo braid on the outside but with wire, and then your beads running on the inside of the bracelet, and then finished off nicely at the end there. So this is actually using a Kumihimo technique. It's called the Hollow Braid. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So the